Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk bugle, it's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's bugle 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BS and no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I thought
button?
I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? The Elk Talk Podcast is brought to you by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, ensuring the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. To become a member, go to rmef.org.
And the podcast is also brought to you by OnX Maps. And with OnX Maps, you can know where you stand with the most accurate hunting GPS tech on the market with land ownership maps that work offline. Go to onxmaps.com and use promo code ELKTALK, and you're going to save 20% when you sign up for an app membership at onxmaps.com.
The podcast is also brought to you by Gerber. Go to gerbergear.com and learn about the knives, the Vital, the Big Game Vital, the Gator Premium, all the things that we use when we're out in the woods, and not just knives, but also some really cool multi-tools that they have.
We're also proud to partner with Sitka Gear, and if you go to sitkagear.com, you'll see their full line of clothing, and their tagline is turning clothing into gear, and they are doing that through advanced technology that allows you to stay in the field longer, hunt harder, and stay safer.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by GoHunt.com. Go to GoHunt.com and sign up for the Insider. The Insider is changing how hunts and hunting information are found. No doubt about that. Use promo code ELKTALK, and when you sign up for the Insider, you're going to get $50 of store credit, mad money, in their gear shop.
And we are also brought to you by Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. And Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls is the original designer and inventor of the pallet plate diaphragm that's completely changed the way elk calls are made and used. And to find out more and to order your elk calls, go to RockyMountainHuntingCalls.com or BuglingBull.com and use promo code ELKTALK, and you're going to save 15% on all of your elk calls and elk call accessories.
And with that, Corey, we are ready to get into it.
Let's jump into it.
Well, folks, the first time that we tried this, Corey, we ended up with a bad audio file.
Well, and I appreciate you saying we, in that it was me that somehow had an issue. The headset had a short in it or something. We started off good, but by the time we were done, I realized we weren't recording any audio on my end. So
Well, I hope people don't think that we've quit the Elk Talk podcast. It's just we've been busy. Yeah. We've been busy acquiring material to talk about, right?
That's right. Yeah. So here,
where did you
take two, I guess, on the elk season recap, right?
Yeah. The first one was a mid-season recap, but when that audio file went south, it's taken us so long to get together again. I guess it's almost a season recap now instead of mid-season.
I know for me it's a season recap, because if I go elk hunting one more time, I'm going to be in trouble on multiple levels.
Really? I leave tomorrow for Wyoming with my Uncle Larry.
Ooh.
And I come home for Thanksgiving, and then I leave again for Arizona and then Wyoming. So if I'm calling you and asking if I can have my mail forwarded to your house, you'll know
We will
why.
all understand.
And I'm suffering from the world's worst sinus infection right now, so it sounds like I have cotton in my ears. So if I'm talking really loud, it's because I can't hear anything with my sinuses plugged up. So.
I had something going on last week when we were together in Montana. My ears wouldn't pop, and it sounded like I was in a pressure chamber the whole time. But
and how you doing now?
It seems to come and go. Like one day I'll wake up and be fine. The next day I basically yawn all day trying to get my ears to pop, and they won't pop. Something sinus related.
Well, yeah, you just talked about our Montana excursion together. Do you want to start with that or end with that?
Oh boy, we better end with that. Yeah.
Okay, let's start, because you've got your YouTube series, Destination Elk, that's just started rolling out, right?
Yeah, we're just about, we're just a little over a week into the series right now.
And the first one is in Idaho.
We started. Idaho starts August 30th, and our intention was our first hunt of the year was going to be hunting for Roosevelt elk in Oregon, which is a part two, a continuation of last year's hunt. And we decided just to slip out for an opening day hunt here in Idaho that was really more of a recon mission, just to kind of get an idea, see if we could find out where a few elk were, so that when we come back from Oregon, we're able to get into them. But it quickly escalated, and we ended up packing elk meat for the first 2 days of Idaho's elk season. those are good scouting trips when you can scout during season, and it turns out like that. But yeah, so our season kicked off August 30th in Idaho, and Donnie and I went out, and our camera guy John, and we were just hunting locally here in Idaho, and we located a bull the night before season, and we kind of had that as our plan A, and plan A didn't pan out. We couldn't get him bugling opening morning, so we went, and honestly, we didn't have a plan B. It was just, hey, let's just drive around and hike out here and just look for sign and see if we can find any rubs, see if we can get a bugle back. And we honestly parked the truck, left our packs in the truck, and just grabbed the bugle tube. And I told Donnie, grab your bow. We're just going to walk around the corner, and in case something fires off, we'll have the bow at least. Well, 2.5 or 3 miles later, we're on top of the mountain, and we have a herd bull that's firing off and fired up, and Donnie's already been at full draw on a raghorn, and we've had the herd bull within 60 yards of us twice, and we're sitting up there with no water, no food. John's camera batteries have 6 minutes left on them, and we're have a decision to make. So, we give camera guys a pretty hard time, and we blame everything on them. But
yep.
I think John kind of gave himself, and I think maybe even all cameramen, a little bit of a reprieve from the insults and injury we give him, because he actually hiked all the way back to the truck middle of the day. And I say it's his fault because he forgot the batteries. I could have continued hunting with no water and no food, but he couldn't have continued doing his job without batteries. So I guess to a little bit of a degree, he had the responsibility of walking back to the truck, but he walked all the way back, and about 3 hours later came back shirt off, just wringing wet and sweat. And my first thought is, holy cow, he has backpacks stacked on top of backpacks. He has all this gear. He brought food and water for us. And I'm thinking, what a great guy. And I went to tell him thank you. And he said, well, I'm pretty sure we're going to kill an elk this afternoon. I didn't want to be the only one with a pack packing, so I brought your pack for you. I don't know if I give him credit now. He doesn't get as much credit for being a good guy, but it turned out to be a good thing, because Donnie killed a bull that evening, and we needed our backpacks and our food and our water and our knives and everything else we had left at the truck that morning.
Oh, how cool is that? Huh? The scouting episode that turns out to be a kill.
Yeah, great footage, great call in. It's we do the day by day series, the Destination Elk, and it's basically they follow day by day on YouTube through our entire elk season. And it often takes a handful of days, especially hunting early like that, to be able to have a successful hunt. But this year we were able to kick off the premiere episode coming out of the gate swinging and packing elk meat. So pretty exciting start to the series for sure.
Yeah. So where did it go from there? Did you finally get to Oregon after that?
Yeah, we got to Oregon. We had a few days off. We wanted to hit Oregon a little bit later this year. Last year we went opening day in Oregon, which was like August 24th or 26th. It was really early. And on our last day there, the elk were just starting to fire off pretty good. So this year we wanted to go back and kind of pick up where we left off. So I think we got there, it was sometime around that September 5th time frame, middle of the week there. I think we left on the 4th. Our first day hunting was the 5th. And hunted with David Brinker, which if anybody who watched Destination Elk last year knows, Brinker's the guy who fell on the arrow and took one for the team there and really bumped up our YouTube views to be able to watch him lay there bleeding nearly to death. And we teamed back up with him, and first order of business was to make sure that his arrows were secure in his quiver, and they were. But he put us in some great areas. He hunted with us first day and then kind of turned us loose for the next 3 days. And we were into elk literally immediately. And we got into elk every day we hunted those areas. And for anyone who listened to our recent Elk Talk podcast about non-residents, you know the story about us getting a note left on the truck. And
you guys from Washington, right?
Yeah, we rented a truck because, we have the elk truck that we're giving away at the end of Destination Elk, and it's obnoxious. I mean, it's jacked up and has big tires, and it's completely wrapped in Elk 101 and Mountain Ops, and it's not one you take and park at a trailhead if you want to be incognito. So we drove it to Oregon and then ended up with a rental truck, and of course the rental truck, you get license plates from wherever they happen to come from last, and we parked there at the trailhead the one day, and it came back, and there was a note that said locals only, go back to Washington. We got a good chuckle out of it. And it's funny because, you and I, we got a lot of comments on that non-resident elk hunter podcast.
Right.
And we posted the note immediately, like during elk season while we were in Oregon, and we got, I think, over 500 comments on our Instagram post about it. And then you and I got a lot of comments, and then to promote the episode, once it launched on our YouTube channel, we posted another picture of the note on Instagram, and it got another 200 comments or something. But the actual episode on YouTube is, let me just look here real quick, so I'm sitting at the computer. We have... how many comments here? Non-resident elk hunters are not welcome. In 5 days, we've gotten almost 60,000 views and over 2,000 comments on that episode.
Wow.
So that episode also, not only did we get the nasty gram, another hunter shot an elk that we were calling in when it was about 70 yards from us. And so we actually filmed their elk standing there with an arrow stuck in it in our shooting lane. So it was we had a good test of patience and obstacles that day.
I've never had that happen. We have had an instance where we were waiting for filming light, watching a bull. So it's legal shooting light, but we need an extra 15 or 20 minutes of good camera light. And kaboom! someone shot the elk, but never had it happen in an archery hunt like that.
Yeah, that was unfortunately not the first time. Last year when we were in Oregon hunting Roosevelt elk, the similar incident happened. We actually had 3 bulls coming to us. One of them very fired up and vocal, and all of a sudden it got quiet. And we heard branches breaking, and the 2 smaller bulls were slipping up the ridge behind us. And so we ran up on the ridge trying to intercept them, and they kind of bounded off, and we could hear voices and look down the hill 80 yards, and there's 2 hunters down there standing over a nice Roosevelt bull that we never heard them bugle. I think they just happened to be in the right place at the right time and shot the elk. And neither of these incidences were, I don't feel that the hunters were in the wrong at all. I don't think there was any kind of devious intentions trying to slip in on a bull. They just happened to be there, and the bull happened to be on that line coming to us, and they were in the right place at the right time.
Well, I'll take that. I guess what I'm going to do next year, I'm just going to follow around in the woods, and when Corey calls an elk, and I'm just going to go set up a little bit downwind of him.
Oh man,
I'll look for those Washington plates out there on that rental rig, and that's what I'll do. But, so did you guys end up getting an elk in Oregon?
Well, we hunted with Brinker for the first 4 days, and then you and I talked to Shannon Mobbs and Corey Ford from Angry Spike Productions earlier in the year about Roosevelt hunting, and we had an opportunity to team up with them for 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
And another crazy encounter we had. We learned a ton this year about Roosevelt hunting just through our experience last year and be able to apply it this year. And then hunting with Shannon. Shannon is just the Roosevelt elk calling guru. I've come to realize that through talking to him, but then seeing him in action every single day that we hunted with him. We were not only into elk and seeing elk, but we had close encounters with Roosevelt elk. And yeah, it was super exciting, and mature elk too. I think I didn't come to full draw on the one, but I'm trying to think how many times I was at full draw or at least in shooting range of 6-point Roosevelt bulls, which that's a rare animal from everything I've gathered over several years of dreaming about hunting Roosevelt elk. But we went back in deep, and I'll share a few more strategies that worked for us here. But we went back in deep on one. We located it from across the canyon. You basically spend 5 or 6 hours in the brush trying to bust your way to get to this elk. And as far away as they'll answer for a location, once you get on the same hillside as them, they can't hear you and you can't hear them. And so you have to be 200 or 300 yards from them most of the time before you actually get another response. And so we'd spend 5 or 6 hours most days just trying to get on top of the bull, knowing he's there on the hillside somewhere, just looking for that needle in the haystack. And so we went back in, got on a bull. He ended up coming in, but he had the advantage on us. He was uphill, and we just couldn't get him into the setup there. And so we're making our way back down the ridge looking for a bull that had bugled earlier, and 2 bulls fire off across the canyon. But at this point, we're only maybe 800 yards from the bottom of the canyon, which is where the road is, and they're maybe 400 yards up the other side. And I think they're making their way down to the bottom where water is. And so we make our way down, start back up, and we climb the hill about 300 yards. The elk are actually down below us, which is where we wanted them because the wind was coming up at that point. We drop down a little, get the same level, and are working in. And Shannon had kept telling me, if you get in thick with these things, if you're in that tight brush, just plow through the brush right at them. Just put an arrow on and go right at them. And he said, a lot of times they'll stand there and stand their ground. You can walk right into 6 or 8 yards of them and shoot them right there in the brush. And I'm thinking, first off, there's no way they're going to stand there with as much noise as we're making through the brush. And second off, I don't want to be 8 yards from one of these giant Roosevelt bulls that thinks I'm another Roosevelt, because I might just get ran over. But we saw firsthand, it works. We plowed through there, and I bumped into the bull at 8 yards. And typically when that happens, for us, it's gone. That bull leaves and he's 3 miles away. Yeah. The bull ran 20 yards and turned around and started chuckling again. And it was game on. We started pushing through the brush. We played that cat and mouse game in the brush for, 20 minutes. And finally broke out on the other side into a nice shooting lane, a good little open ridge. And we were 60 yards above the road at that point.
Wow.
And you can guess what happens when you're hunting elk right next to a road. We look down, there's a cow elk feeding on the grass on the edge of the road, and a truck comes along. And they see the cow, and they jump out with obnoxious cow calls in hand and start chasing the cow. There is no fault at all. We would have done the same thing if we'd have come around the corner and seen a cow. But we're standing there, within 35 yards of a bull that's fired up, and they start cow calling, and the bull had heard the truck come around the corner, so he leaves and goes up the hill. But another bull 100 yards up above us fires off. And so we realized we've got to get up there to him, because these guys are going to hear him and be right behind us. And we didn't want to start bugling, thinking, man, they're going to think that we're another elk and get them even more excited. So we headed towards the bugling bull, got within 40 yards of him, and Shannon started calling. I move up and set up on the ridge. We can see his antlers at 25 or 30 yards just over the ridge, and all he has to do is come up over the ridge. And I look to my left, and there is a guy sprinting up the hill 20 yards to my left.
Oh.
And the bull's 25 yards ahead of us. And so I look over and I cow call, and the guy looks at me and cow calls back and keeps going up the ridge. So I move up. I'm thinking, if he wants a foot race here, I will foot race him, knowing that now we've ruined any opportunity of actually calling the elk in. So I move up the hill about 10 yards, hoping that he'll bump the bull and the bull will come over the ridge on our side. Well, the bull turned and went straight up the ridge and got up there 80 yards and started barking. So the guy pops out on the ridge 35 yards above us, and I cow call to him rather aggressively and frustratedly.
Yeah.
And he turns around and looks at me. So I give him the two hands up in the air like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he waves me off. He literally gave me the hand and waved me off towards the truck. So we, as frustrating as it was, we took the high road and dropped back down to the road. And it was almost, I mean, we were basically almost out of shooting light at that point. But that bull was as good as dead, I think, because he was right there. He was fired up. We had perfect wind. He just had 5 yards to walk over the ridge, and he would have been 25 yards and in the open, which doesn't happen in that country. But we, I don't want to give a spoiler alert for this one, but last year, Donnie didn't even have an opportunity. And this year, with as good of action as we were into, well, you'll just have to watch the series on the Elk 101 YouTube channel to see how it all turned out.
Come on now, Corey. We're doing a season recap, and you're giving everybody the teaser here.
I will share, I think we have either 7 or 8 successful hunts this season on our YouTube series. So you can do the math when we're done with the recap here and see if it ties into this hunt or not.
All right. I'll cut you that slack, but don't be doing this anymore. I mean, you get people all wound up, and then it's like, well, I better not say. Come on.
But that's good marketing, right? You give them the teaser and then send them to the final to catch the conclusion, right?
I guess so. I'm not very good at this stuff. I'm an accountant, not a marketer. So I just tell people what happened and say, if you want to go watch it, go ahead. If you don't, I hope you're at least hunting. So,
well, how was your? What was the start of your season like? Your early part of September?
I was delinquent in getting out in the elk woods because I was busy helping other friends who had tags. I was in Nevada on a pronghorn and deer hunt. I was in Arizona on a pronghorn hunt. And while I was doing that, our crew, Michael Parente, he lucked out and drew one of the Wyoming random tags in a pretty darn good unit. And I guess before I continue past that point, I'm trying to figure out the sanity or insanity of applying my crew for tags in the same units I apply for.
You're lowering your own draw odds.
Yeah, I pay the freight, I pay for their licenses, their permits, everything. And Marcus and Michael and we all applied for this same unit. Well, Michael gets one of the 3 random tags. It's out on our YouTube channel. He goes down there, and on the 3rd day, I think it was, he shot a nice 6-point. Michael, this is his first time he's ever had a limited entry tag. He's only been elk hunting a couple of years now. And the first day, he airballs a very nice bull. And Michael is by far the archer in our office. You put him out on a range at 100 yards, he'll put him in there so tight. And then to have a 30-yard shot out in the hill, and he missed. I think for him, it was just an awakening of how exciting it is when a bull elk is standing there screaming at you. Grown men end up doing things they could never imagine themselves doing. And but the good news is he redeemed himself on the next one. And then Marcus and his wife Kara, in their normal Montana fashion, went out, and opening weekend, Kara shot a bull. That's out on our YouTube channel. And then I went in with the Gerber guys, the president, Andrew Gritzbaugh, and one of the product development guys, Carson Coivisto. We went into, I told them, if this is the week that fits your calendar, we are here to disprove the theory about full moons. And I'm still bullheaded enough to not believe that whole full moon thing. But we went out the day before the peak full moon. And the first day we actually did hear 2 bulls. The next 2 days we did not hear a bull. They got some spot and stock opportunities during that absolute full moon peak. I think it was just my bad calling.
Still not convinced it was a full moon?
No, still not convinced. And then the last 2 days, both of them had close encounters, but nobody got to release an arrow. Brush in the way, or just the bull wouldn't stand still. Cows move them off, or you know how it is. When you think it's there, it's in your grasp, all of a sudden it slips through your fingers. And so that was that hunt here in Montana. And then I sent the crew down to film my buddy Scott Jones down in Nevada. And Scott drew this really, really good tag, which I don't think there are any bad tags in Nevada. And Scott is the most meticulous archer I know. He's an accomplished archer who has shot so many animals with his bow. But he warned me in advance. He said, "Randy, I love having your crew here, but there's a very good chance I might pass every opportunity that comes if it's not the perfect shot." I said, "Okay, I'm fine with that." And then I see the footage. Then I'm thinking, Scott, that looked like a perfect opportunity. But, camera angles are often different than the angle the shooter has or whatever. And so they called in all these bulls in Nevada, had a close encounter every day, and Scott went home with his tag in his pocket. But if you want to see a lot of really nice bulls and some good bugling activity, that one's out there on our YouTube channel. And I just have a ton of respect for Scott Jones and the way he does things. And, it's interesting when you read comments or on social media, say like YouTube, where people are allowed to comment, of how many people I'd say it's split right down the middle on Scott's hunt. How many admired that he was only going to take the shot that he was absolutely comfortable with? And then how many of them gave the comment of, "What a knucklehead. I'd have been shooting 20 yards sooner, blah, blah, blah." And so you kind of open yourself up to the comments of the world anytime you put something out there like that.
Absolutely.
So that kind of got us through our September as far as elk hunting. I ended up I think it was September 22nd, I ended up heading to British Columbia for mountain caribou and moose. And those were, when you do a 10-day hunt and it takes 3 days of travel on each side, that really messes up your archery elk season.
Yeah.
But we make up for it in rifle season.
I was going to say, so you spent the second half of September not in elk country.
Yeah, unfortunately. But I knew you were out there. I knew you were carrying the torch, Corey. So I thought, the world of elk hunting is in good hands if Corey and Donnie are out there.
Well, that's yet to be seen, I guess. But we did come back from Oregon about that same time frame as when you were up chasing moose and caribou, and we hunted just here in Idaho, just over the counter, public land area we've been hunting for several years. And I was excited for a couple of reasons. We had, I think we ended up with 8 days. Donnie's already tagged out. So there's, typically we only have 6, 7, maybe 8 days to hunt. And a lot of times there's 2 or 3 of us with a tag. And so what that really amounts to is each of us getting 2 or 3 days max to actually get it done, because we rotate off every day. We switch who the shooter is, and the other person is the dedicated caller, and we don't even pack a bow as a caller. And I know, we get a lot of comments about that too, that's ridiculous. What if the elk circles around you and, you miss out on that opportunity? And there have been times we have missed out on that opportunity, but I think it focuses us as the caller, and we realize our only responsibility is to get that bull in front of the shooter. And there's none of that, oh man, that's a big bull, or that bull's coming below me, I'm going to deviate from the plan here, I'm going to go call it in for myself, or I'm going to try to slip in and get a shot. I think with a focused approach, we have more opportunities than those chance opportunities that sometimes come through the back door. But this year I had 7 or 8 days where I was the only shooter, knowing that I was also going to have an opportunity to hunt with my 14-year-old daughter, Jessie, who wanted her first elk to be with a bow. So we hunted a couple days, right, as we got back, and got into a couple elk, but I don't know if they were pressured. We were having troubles finding elk a little bit. We were into them, but just not that September 17th, 18th, 19th rut fest we should have been into. And that Friday, my daughter didn't have volleyball practice, so I picked her up as soon as school was out, and we headed out. And we got to hunt on e-bikes this year, and it's pretty cool. By the end of this episode, I think I'll have listed 4 or 5 different modes of transportation and packing out animals, but e-bikes were one of the coolest modes that we got this year. And I know you got to know the regulations where you're at. We actually took them to Oregon with us and found out that while they are allowed in the areas we were hunting, the Fish and Game has a travel management agreement with some of these areas, and they're illegal to use to hunt with. So while you can ride them in there, if you want to just tool around, you can't actually hunt on them or use them for hunting. So we found that out after we toted them all the way to Oregon, and fortunately found out before we used them, so they stayed at camp the whole time. But here in Idaho, we've got a couple places that, it's roaded. They're good roads, but they're gated, and it's non-motorized. And we were able to actually use those to get back in 4 or 5 miles a couple times, and honestly get in there in 12 or 15 minutes. So pretty awesome mode of transportation. So with my daughter, we had 3 of the bikes, and there were Donnie, I, and the camera guy. And so we took the trailer that was meant to be used to pack out elk meat, and we rigged it up for my daughter to ride on, and we toted her back in there on the trailer. It's kind of funny. She's got these pillows and blankets all stuffed around her, and she looked as comfortable as could be back there, just tooling along in the trailer. But we got back in there, and Jessie is one of those, she's my only daughter, and so I don't have a whole lot of other experience with girls to judge on. But when you ask her or tell her to do something, it's like immediate, and it is to perfection. She's one of those ones that picks up a bow or basketball. She loves basketball. And so I spent 3 minutes showing her shooting form, and she has not deviated from perfect shooting form in the last 4 years on any shot she's taken. And archery's kind of the same. She's money. And so we shot before we went out at 30 yards. She's shooting like a 2-inch group. And I told her, okay, here's how it's going to work. We'll get the bull going. Donnie's going to be the caller. I'm going to be right next to you. I'll tell you when to draw, and just draw as smooth as you can. I'll make sure that, the bull can't see you when I tell you to draw. And then when he gets in a shooting lane, I'll cow call, wait for him to stop, make sure he's broadside, put the pin right behind the shoulder, and shoot. And it worked out just like that. The bull was across the knob from us. He actually went away from us. He didn't want pressure. When we first started bugling, he was bedded and had a weak bugle, and we chased him for a couple of ridges, and he was going over the next ridge, dropping off the backside. You could barely hear his bugle, and so I went quiet. And about 15 minutes later, I hear him start bugling again, and he's coming back up. And I told Jessie, he's curious. He's a little nervous about where we went to. And he bugled, I think he bugled 6 times on his own coming up the backside of that ridge. And he got to the ridge and bugled and was looking, just scanning across on our side. And he turned to leave, and I screamed at him, and he couldn't handle it. And he came in on a string, And he was at about 40 yards, came through some trees, and I told her to draw. She drew, and he came into this beautiful shooting lane at like 28 yards. Well, everything was perfect up until the point I went to cow call, and my diaphragm was turned sideways in my mouth. I don't know if you ever had a diaphragm sideways in your mouth, up in the roof of your mouth, but it's not just a quick little spin with your tongue to get it aligned. I'm sitting there trying to pull it down and get it spun around, and I could tell Jesse was like, "Why are you not cow calling? This elk is walking through a 15-yard lane and he's about to leave the shooting lane." And I finally got it spun around at the last second and let out a quick cow call, and he stopped. But I think what happened was she was ready as soon as I cow called, and as soon as I cow called, she didn't immediately shoot, but she quit following the bull. And the bull took another half a body length step before he came to stop, and she waited for him to stop and then shot. But she ended up hitting him back a little bit. And, I immediately reassured her, "Hey, no problem. The bull's, you got it in the body cavity. He's going to die, and we're going to find him." And so it was, we had about 30 minutes of light left there. And so we ended up backing out overnight, coming back in the next morning. And it was a tough track job. I'm not going to lie. Those elk are tough, and she hit it far back. But it took us probably 3 hours the next morning, and we only had, 10 drops of blood after the initial first 100 yards. And he went another, 400 yards probably. But I could tell immediately he wouldn't turn and even take a step uphill. It was all downhill and in a creek bottom. And when he did take a step uphill, I told her, it's over. He's dead. He's going uphill to try to get a little bit of a vantage point to watch us. And we went another 20 yards and he was laying there dead. So that was, that made my season right there. Just, 14-year-old little girl, and shot her first elk and shot it with a bow, and to be able to share that experience and then to be able to capture it all on film. It was, I told Donnie after that, even if I don't kill an elk in Idaho from this point on, that was worth my season right there.
Oh, for sure. I don't know how you would, no matter what you did for the rest of the year, it's not going to compare to that.
No. And she, when we were tracking that elk, and that's the hard part. I've been on enough of those track jobs that they're 50-50. You get an arrow in a shoulder blade, an arrow in that high area of the void up in the back, something like that. And you hold out hope, but in the back of your mind, you're not going to recover that elk. It's just shoot them in the shoulder blade. They aren't a vital hit. But if you get it in that body cavity, I would challenge anybody. That elk is dead. He's going to die.
Yeah.
But those can be incredibly tough track jobs. And a lot of times you don't recover that elk just because you can't follow a blood trail. And if you get in with a whole bunch of other elk, you don't know which track is which. We were incredibly fortunate that was the only elk in this canyon. And anytime I saw a fresh track, I knew it was him. So we're able to keep on the track, even though we didn't have blood. But in the back of my mind, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, there's a chance we might not find this elk. I promised her we would, and I'm not giving up at all until we've gone through everything we can and then some. But I kept looking back at her. I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" Expecting her to say, "I don't know, are we going to find this elk?" And she just smiled the whole time. "I'm great. This is fun." And I think she just, had that hope that we're going to find this elk. My dad said we're going to find it, and everything's good. So there wasn't that doubt at all in the back of her mind, and that was fun to see. It was refreshing to see, because I think the guys I hunt with, we've been in that situation enough to know that we build each other up, but a lot of times it's just, "Hey man, it's all going to be good. We're going to find this bull. We'll just keep going." Trying to push each other, but saying it knowing, "Hey, yeah, there's a chance. It's looking pretty grim here."
Oh, that's cool. Well, there you let the cat out. You let the cat out of the bag with that one, Corey.
Yeah, you've got to watch that episode. That's camera right over her shoulder, me tucked up right next to her, whispering in her ear, "Go ahead and draw." And it was pretty incredible. Plus, you get to see us pack an elk out on an e-bike, which I forgot to mention. Donnie's elk, he shot opening day. We used motorcycles. We were in about 3 miles, and there was a motorcycle trail about 3/4 of a mile from where he shot it. So we went back and got the motorcycles and rode them in there. And I told him at the end of when we got back to the truck and had all the quarters in there, the next time I suggest packing out an elk on a motorcycle, remind me about this experience and we'll pack it out on our backs. Man,
I don't have a motorcycle.
Yeah, I got them just so we could get into some more remote country where there's motorized trails, and we never used them to access the country. We used them that one time to pack out the elk, and it was a mistake. But
so, are you saying that on your website there's slightly used motorcycles for sale?
Yeah. No, I think using them to access country is good, but we're gonna have to talk about llamas here in a little bit.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you converted me, but you opened my eyes to some potential that I hadn't recognized before.
Yeah, well, while I was in British Columbia, my employees are still on the probationary period after what happened. When I left on September 22nd, I told them, between the three of you, Michael, Dan, and Dale, you guys have to go and hunt elk every morning and film it. Rotate, one guy hunting, one guy filming, blah, blah, blah. I get back from...
And they're getting paid for this, right?
So I get back to Montana on October 6th or 7th. There's not one piece of footage of them elk hunting. Yeah. I'm like, guys... Did you think I was kidding when I said your job description means you go and hunt elk every day in September? So we'll find out next year. I doubt that anybody's going to not get the memo next September. or we'll be having... Yeah. Well, we will be finding new people who want to hunt elk.
I was just going to say, Are you hiring? Because I may send in an application. If you're paying people and forcing them to elk hunt every day of September, man.
Yeah. And then they don't do it.
It does sound like it's too good to be true. So maybe they just thought you were kidding.
They found out when I got home, I was not kidding. Fortunately, what bailed us out from a content standpoint at that time is my buddy Bo Beatty, the Llama man. He and I were talking last January when the Wyoming draw deadline came. He said he had 6 points. I said, Bo, I'd really like to help you get this tag. I think you might draw it because there's some trends going on here that this could be the year you might draw. Sure enough, he drew it, and he and his friend, camera guy Tyler, went down there, and he shot a really, really nice bull, super nice bull. With his llamas, they had to change their camp, go back to the trailhead, go all the way around these canyons, hike in 9.5 miles and set up a spike camp. And then from there, from their spike camp, they still shot the bull another 4.5 miles from there. So I'm just getting too old where there's no way, what's that, a total of 14 miles? There's no way I'm packing elk out 14 miles.
Yeah.
But with a big string of llamas, Bo got it done. So
that's awesome.
But yeah, so anyone looking for a job in the outdoor space, stand by, folks.
Let me post my job opening first here.
Okay.
So I'll skip my Idaho hunt. We can come back and talk about it. But since we're talking about job openings, my youngest son, Sam, who is 12, turned 13 2 days before rifle season opened. And he broke his leg in August skateboarding, and he's not a skateboarder. He got on a skateboard basically for the first time, and a second and a half later, he was laying on the ground with a broken leg, which I think is probably a pretty normal experience for people standing on skateboards. But he spent 7 weeks in a boot letting his leg recover because the fracture went through the growth plate. And the Friday before, so opening day was a Tuesday. The Friday before, he got cleared with an x-ray that his leg had healed and he could take the boot off. I didn't realize, I've never broken a leg. I didn't realize how much your muscle atrophies when you're in a boot for 7 weeks. Even, like I could see an older person, but for a 13-year-old who's an active, athletic kid, his leg was about half the size of his other leg. And so even with the boot off, he's still limping pretty good and, doesn't have a lot of leg strength to get up and down the mountain. But he was a trooper. And I had found a herd of elk the previous week and kind of kept tabs on them, just sitting back a mile away, listening to them bugle every night and figuring out where they were going every morning. And so opening morning, we were in and set up at a little vantage point. And it was hit and miss. One day they would go up the back side of the ridge. The next day they'd go up the front side of the ridge. And fortunately that morning they came up the front side. And Sam was set up, had the shooting sticks. The bull came into a shooting window and he pulls the trigger and click. And I looked down and the bolt's open on his rifle. So by the time he reached down and closed the bolt and got back on the shooting lane, the bull had walked through it and was gone. And I'm thinking, that was your chance, buddy. We aren't getting another chance here. But as luck would have it this season, the bull went over the back of the ridge, hit the thick timber, still didn't know we were there. And he knew we were there because we were calling to him, but he didn't know he was being pursued by hunters. And we got on the ridge and started kind of paralleling him and found a little open lane, and he popped out into it and turned, walking straight away from us down the hill. And just as he got to the bottom of the open window there, he went to turn to the right and step out of it. And I bugled, and he bugled back, stopped broadside and bugled back. And Sam squeezed off a shot, and Sam missed. But again, fortunately, the elk was full bugle and couldn't tell. He heard a loud sound, didn't know what it was, didn't know where it was coming from. And he turned 180 degrees broadside in the same shooting window and stood there. And Sam made do, shot him, dropped him. The bull stood back up. Sam shot him again, dropped him for good. Both shots were perfect right behind the shoulders, like 160-yard shot. And so we're hugging and celebrating. Cool. And I turn around to my camera guy, who... John is our normal camera guy, and John is he can spot elk from behind the camera. He can film elk from behind the camera. And with all of his camera gear, he packs as much elk as we do.
I have a feeling where this is going.
Yeah, John wasn't available that day. So I had called Tyler, who works for me in customer service and does some marketing for the online course, and said, hey, you've been talking about wanting to get into filming. You want to come down and video a hunt? I'll set the camera on all auto settings. All you have to do is point it at the elk and hit record. Yeah, you know where this one turned out. I turned around to give a fist bump to Tyler, and he hung his head and he said something to the effect of, do I need to turn in my resignation now? Yeah. In all of the excitement, he videoed everything. He just forgot to hit the record button. So we have a whole bunch of really cool action and bugling of us in close to an elk bugling, Sam getting up on the ridge. But from the time we got set up to the time Sam pulled the trigger and we celebrated, there was no footage. So I asked Sam, I said, what should we do with Tyler? And he said, first thing, he didn't even hesitate. He said, fire him.
Well,
we do not have a job opening. We are not firing Tyler. He felt horrible, which, I can...
Oh, I bet.
It's not the first time that's happened. And I kept telling him, hey, don't worry about it. I'm sure Sam will have plenty more opportunities to shoot his first elk, and rubbing it in a little bit. And Tyler has been completely forgiven for that. And his job is not in jeopardy over not hitting record. So we don't have a job opening.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure my Uncle Mike wishes the camera wasn't recording on our next trip when we went to New Mexico. We went down there. And so you got to understand my family. My mom has 6 brothers, and they love to give each other the rhubarb all the time. And so a bit of that is kind of rubbed off on me. And I head down there. I meet Mike. He drove down from Minnesota. We get there, Thursday afternoon, got camp set up, go scouting. Season opens Saturday morning. Walk out there, look over the first little draw, and here's about a 330-inch 6-point with 2 smaller bulls feeding. I'm like, this never happens. So we watch them. We sneak out of there. That was kind of our scouting for the night. And I'm telling Mike, now, could you shoot that one at 300 yards? Oh, if I can see him, he's as good as Dad, he keeps telling me. All right. Of all the people in the family, he says, if you're going to have someone at the trigger at the moment of truth, I'm the guy you want. All right. Mike, there's the old saying, you should brag about your shooting after the hunt. So we go out there Friday morning, relocate that bull, leave him. The wind starts howling. I'm like, let's go look around. We go look around, don't find anything. Go back out there the night before season opens. So later that evening, find him again. I'm thinking this never happens. There's a bull of this size never stays a half mile from the trailhead, slightly uphill, every day you go and look for him. There's no way he's going to be there tomorrow morning. But, they are in this post-rut mode, and they don't move much then. So we're back at camp that night. Mike's talking about how if that bull's in the same place in the morning, I should just punch my tag right now, he says. All right. So we get to the trailhead. We're the first people there. We hike up there. The sun is all messed up. I can't see anything, so I skirt around a little bit more to the east, so the sun would be at my back. And there is that bull 100 yards away from where we left him the night before.
Man,
yeah. This episode it's starting to air on our YouTube channel right now. So we wheel up there, we sneak and get set up. I range it 320 yards. And before we got up to the rock where Mike was going to shoot from, I said, no, Mike, it's going to be 300, 320, something like that. You good? Oh, that thing, he doesn't know it, but he's taking his last breaths right now. He says, okay. So we didn't record all this on the YouTube episode. We don't want to rub it in that bad. But we get up there. Mike gets all set up. Finally, the bull is bedded the whole time. Finally, the bull hears us whispering, and he stands up. He's looking our direction, but he's broadside, trying to look into the sun to see what's going on. And I'm thinking, are you going to shoot, Mike? Are you going to wait for this bull to die of old age? Are you going to shoot him? Finally, he shoots, and it is so... I don't know what happened, but suffice to say, he missed right over his back, and the bull didn't even flinch. The bull just looks back at the hillside where the dirt flew up, like, what was that? And now I'm starting to get a little more excited. I'm like, Mike, shoot him. Well, there's a bunch of grass in front of us where we'd laid down, and Mike's trying to find the bull in the scope through the grass. And he's like, where is he? And Mike has hearing aids and the wind's blowing. And so he's not hearing that well. So I'm having to talk really loud. Like, he's right there where he was when you missed him. And finally the bull tired of our shenanigans and walked off. So moral of that story is brag about your shooting after the hunt.
Oh, man.
Not before. Yeah.
Well,
But he did. He redeemed himself the next night. We'd seen some bulls later the first day, and we couldn't get to them. So the next afternoon, we snuck over there, about a 30-mile-an-hour wind, and we got set up straight downwind from this one bull, and Mike drilled him. Right. I mean, how he hit that bull at 200, little over 200 yards, absolutely perfect. But he shot over the back of that big one. Still scratching my head on that one. But it's going to make for some entertainment with the audience.
Oh, yeah. Well, that leads in really nicely to our hunt in Montana with you a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can relate.
What do you mean?
To missing an elk with a rifle.
You didn't tell me about this.
The only difference is I didn't get a chance to redeem myself.
All right, tell me again. What happened? You guys separated from us, so is there a story here that I don't know about?
Well, Donnie killed an elk in Montana while we were rifle hunting.
I know. You guys went and packed them out with llamas while
we did.
Me and Matt, we stayed and broke down camp while you guys went and did the hard work.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we were packing out that elk with llamas. It was just a painful reminder that I actually missed that elk first.
What do you got that to blame on? Borrowed rifle.
You don't even want to know.
Okay.
No, I'm not a rifle guy, but I can shoot a rifle, and that's there are guys who can shoot rifles way better than me, but I can go out to the range and I can dial in a rifle and I can hit steel out to 800 yards pretty consistently. Yeah. And if a rifle's dialed in and sighted in, and I know the range, and an elk's laying there, I'm pretty confident at 377 yards.
That's pretty long shot.
What I wasn't confident in was the technology that I was using on this hunt, and I was relying on technology a little too much. And the scope didn't adjust like it was supposed to, and the scope was actually set on 650 yards instead of 377. So after my first shot and the bull didn't, he just looked around and I could tell I didn't hit him. I thought, well, I'm just going to use the holdover, because at 377 yards shooting the caliber I was, it was about a 11 or 12 inch drop under the crosshair. And so I just held over and shot and missed again. And I turned to Donnie and said, "You shoot him." So Donnie shot him and killed him. And we got looking into it. And actually, when we watched the video, when we got back to camp, the vapor trail was about 4 feet over the bull's back from that first shot. And
ouch.
Yeah. So it, obviously if it's set at 650 yards and he's 377, I think there's probably about 40 inches of drop. And I relied on technology at a time and in an endeavor that I knew better than to rely on technology, and it bit me. So no fault of. I mean, I made a great shot. I was so calm. I breathed off. I made a great shot. The gun and the bullet performed perfectly. It was just me relying too much on technology.
So, well, if it was any consolation, when we got back that night, you heard my story that while Donnie was shooting his elk, I was shooting mine.
Yeah.
But a little bit of a side story is that bull was bugling on, what day was it? November 8th, I believe I shot mine.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
You don't get that very often.
No. And the side story even further is Matt Seidel from Onyx Maps the day before had shot a bull way back in there. And so for the listener, you and Donnie were going one way and we were always going a different way. And so Matt and Marcus, my camera guy, say, "Well, you need to come with, because if we see some more elk, you're going to want to shoot one." And Bo, the llama guy, says, "Well, yeah, we better bring 6 llamas then instead of just 2 or 3.
That's optimism.
I said, "Well, you guys are pretty optimistic." So we hike way back in there over the other side of the divide where Matt's elk is hanging in the trees. And about noon, we got a little fire going. Bo has made some of his dehydrated meals that he makes. And Matt says, "Hey, there's a cow elk running out in the opening there." And we watch. It's way far away. Here comes a cow and a calf, another cow and a calf, 2 5 points and 6 spikes, all chasing this one cow. Well, we watch for a long time, and I'm looking through the spotter. I'm like, that bull is bugling. I know it's too far away and too windy for us to hear, and he climbs on top of her, and he's trying to take care of his business, and he's running all the other elk off. And when I ended up shooting him, we made this huge loop. It was about, 2.5, 3 hours to get over there, but he's locked up jousting with the other 5 point, trying to see who's going to get this cow that's in heat. And we didn't hear him bugle. He got shot before he could let out another bugle. But the guys watching from afar said, "I can't believe you shot that thing while he was locked up with another bull." Well, it's not my fault. That's when he got into my shooting lane. What am I supposed to do? So, yeah, we had a great hunt down there.
Yeah, we ended up killing 4 elk in 3 days.
Yeah. Bo, the llama guy, he shot the biggest one.
He did.
And that was by accident. He said, "I'll sit over here and keep an eye on him, give you hand signals." So we make this big loop around the ridge, and a couple other hunters come in. Just, how it is on public land, and they bumped those elk, and those elk, instead of coming the way we thought they'd go, they went right to Bo. And so he shot it, really a nice 6x7. And
huge 6x7.
Yeah. Yeah. For as much pressure as that place gets, that's an impressive elk that he shot. So,
yep. No, it was a great area. I mean, I loved it's a great area to go to get into elk, because Montana's, not every state does everything right, and Montana's got their issues. But after listening to the way they manage that, you can't shoot spikes. And what did we see? 15 or 20 spikes in those 4 days. Yeah. There were spikes everywhere. They're protected. They're safe. And what that turns into is the next season, you have a crop of young 5-point bulls running everywhere. And I think we saw more 5 points than we saw spikes by quite a few. And, the downside to it is, like you said, it's a general area. It's pretty accessible for the most part. I mean, you have to hike to get back into where the elk are, but you can spot elk from the roads sometimes. And there's plenty of elk there, but you don't rarely get those mature bulls like that. We showed up the first night, and Bo had shot his elk already, and you were telling us, "Oh yeah, he shot a nice 6-point, and just a nice one." And then Bo said, "You want to see the antlers?" I'm like, "Of course I want to see the antlers." You went out and opened the Llama trailer, and the antlers were there, and I was like, "Okay, this is not a nice 6-point. This is a giant 6x7.
Yeah. The only downside for our YouTube channel is, obviously, with only one camera guy, the camera guy wasn't going to stay with Bo, who was just kind of guarding the back door. So we don't have Bo's shot on camera, but not because somebody failed to hit the record button.
Yeah,
just the fact that nobody was there. But no, that hunt was the second week of rifle season. It was November 5th through the 5th, 6th, and 7th, or 6th, 7th, and 8th, something like that. And classic late season pattern. The elk are going to be back in the nasty spots. They're going to be in bachelor groups. And you just, having something like llamas really gives you an advantage, because where Matt shot his bull and where I shot mine, there's no way we'd shoot 2 bulls that far back there without having a way to get them out of there.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe excitement would have got the best of us and we would have shot them, but having llamas sure made it easier. Let's put it that way.
Yep. No, you guys were you were hurting when you got back to camp that night.
Yeah. Yeah, it was with llamas. We got back to camp, I don't know, 8:30, 9 o'clock that night, something like that. And I was, I could feel that I'd walked a lot that day.
But that was walking without an elk on your back. And there's something to be said about that.
Yeah. And we had 6 llamas with us that day. They easily handled 2 bull elk, 2, 3. These bulls that Matt and I shot, they're almost twins. They're 3.5-year-old bulls. And one llama was empty. So we had 5 llamas with 2 elk spread among them, and it was pretty easy trucking for them.
Yep. No, it was impressive.
And it made it a lot easier for all of us.
We went in to get Donnie's bull that next day after he shot it. And that was my first experience of actually being around llamas and seeing them in action. Of course, you've been talking about it forever. And, I take what you say with a grain of salt. And I have to give you credit there. They are everything you say they are. And it wouldn't have been a bad pack. We were 2 miles in, and it was gradual downhill all the way back out.
Yeah.
But man, load up the elk on there in 3 minutes, and they're loaded up, ready to go. They never even balked. They just followed you along. You didn't have to lead them. We had a lead rope on them, but I never once had tension on the lead rope. They just followed right along. If you stop, they stop. They never once nudge you in the back. They never step on the back of your boot. You go, they go. You don't have to tug on them, pull on them. And it was, I've got some ideas for llama use in the future.
Well, while we were on that hunt, it was my 55th birthday. And when you get to be 55, your mind thinks of all kinds of ways to use llamas. So give yourself about 10 more years. Your llama imagination will expand over the next 10 years.
I'm looking forward to it because it's already going pretty good. That's pretty much the elk season with one exception, and that was my Idaho archery hunt, which...
Are you holding that out, or are you going to tell the audience?
I will tell the audience I killed an elk in Idaho with my bow. I had set a goal to shoot a mature 6-point with my bow in Idaho this year, and I missed a mature 6-point the next day we hunted after packing Jesse's bull out. And talk about deflated. Just, having a goal, working. We climbed 3,000 vertical feet that day, and it took us over 5 hours to get to this bull after we had located him. And everything was picture perfect. We got in, the wind was perfect. We had to work him. He wouldn't come in. We rushed him, got between him and his cows, screamed a bugle. He came firing up the hill to fight. And at 25 yards, quartering away, I missed. And I won't give away all of the details went into that miss, but I will tell you right now, I wanted to cut the strings on my bow.
Yeah.
And, just looking back, last year I had a rough season. I missed a Roosevelt bull. I lost a bull in Wyoming. This was my year of redemption, and missing that bull was painful. But I've got a good hunting partner and a good camera guy that said, hey, we've still got 4 days, no sweat. Yeah, we worked hard for this, and it didn't work out, but tomorrow's a new day, and we might find another one bigger, and we did. And the next day, we found a bigger bull. Again, he was back in a ways, and he was with cows, and we struggled to get in on him. But we had a plan for the next day to go in there and capitalize, knowing where he was at. And he was very vocal and very aggressive. And if you've followed my Instagram at all, you've seen the picture of that bull at 4 yards from me with his lips curled. And we had an incredible encounter with that bull the next day at 4 yards. And I'll just say we packed elk that day. And you've got to watch that episode. It's the coolest footage we've ever captured. And I've seen video camera or trail camera pictures and videos of elk hissing at each other. I've never had one that aggressive, that close, hissing in my face at 4 yards.
Yeah, you showed me the footage, and I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it's awesome, and it's the bull that we had kind of set our sights on after missing the first one, and it's a big, mature Idaho 6-point. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, I would add another piece to our elk season, but I didn't ask Marcus to film this. He went out. He said, yeah, I'm going to go shoot an elk tomorrow. He went out and he shot an elk the next day. He didn't film it. And then he came back to the office and he said, hey, Dan, I know there's some more bulls if you want to go kill one tomorrow. So Dan went out the next day and he shot a bull there. So those guys didn't film it. I didn't give them instruction to film it. So I think Marcus's job is safe because he filmed him and his wife. But these other three guys, Dan and Michael and Dale, this was their one mulligan. Next September, September is 30 days long. There better be 30 days of elk hunting footage, no matter where I'm at and what I'm doing, or we will be looking for 3 new people.
Well, and we did have one more outing as well that I forgot to mention. We got to be involved with the Hunt of a Lifetime hunt once again.
Cool.
And just those experiences are priceless. And you can count on me blocking out that first week of October every year for the rest of my life to be able to be involved with those. It was just, it's elk hunting is elk hunting, and that's phenomenal on its own. But when you get to get outside yourself, which, we have a hard time doing, there's no doubt there is a selfish bone that wants to hunt every day of elk season for ourselves. But when you do make that decision to do it for someone else, and especially someone like 12-year-old Anthony, who came out from Louisiana, he has cystic fibrosis, and, he's never heard an elk bugle, never seen an elk in the wild or in person at all. And we shared our passion with him and had those hunts are successful, whether we fill a tag or not.
Yeah.
But knock on wood, we have not walked away from one of those hunts without filling a tag. And this one was no exception. An incredible call in. He made an incredible shot. And it just solidifies to us the need to be able to share that passion with others and not get locked in on ourselves. So it's a good realignment for us every year to remind ourselves of what we do and why we do it and how blessed we are. And we're going to finish out the Destination Elk series with that hunt, just because it is the capstone to our season every year, even if it's not the last hunt of the season. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys doing that. It's, I get to hear about it. I see the pictures. It's a remarkable opportunity that you make available to these people. And I thank you and admire you guys for doing it.
Well, and it'd be really easy to say, we're doing it for the right reasons, but honestly, it's for us, because there is so much reward in that for us that, obviously we're doing it to share that with them, but we get so much more out of it than anything we put into it. We'll be doing it every year. We had Austin, who hunted with us 2 years ago. He passed away this year, had a brain tumor, and he's the one that he shot that giant 7x8, and he offered a prayer as we got up there to it. And in his prayer, he said, "God, please bless these men to be able to continue helping out people like me." And I told him, after that prayer, I said, "I promise you right now, as long as God keeps giving us people like you to be able to hunt with, I will do this for the rest of my life." And I don't foresee that ever changing.
Oh, whew. That would be meaningful in every way.
It is. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I wish I could tell my wife that my season is coming to an end, but I leave tomorrow for Wyoming. My Uncle Larry, 73 years old, 12-year experimental chemo patient, had a heart attack in April and a stroke last week. He called me over the weekend. He said, "I'm going." I said, "Well, what do you want me to do with you if you tip over out there?" Heck, just leave me out there, he said. So it'll be interesting, because 12 years of chemo has created neuropathy in his feet so bad that he can't feel his feet much. So it's tough sledding for him. But he's bound and determined he's going elk hunting, regardless of what his wife, and love you, Mary, one of my favorite aunts, but we're taking him out there, Mary. So we'll do our best to bring him home, but no promises. And it's fun to hang out with somebody who's been through what he has and have the attitude that, hey, hunting is something that's really a highlight in my life, and I'm going to go do it. I don't care if I have a new stent. I don't care about this cancer, and I don't care that I had a mini stroke, a TIA last week. I'm coming. So be there to pick me up at the airport in Casper.
You got to admire that attitude for sure.
Yeah. So we're doing that one, and then Marcus and I have tags for December. I have an either sex tag, and he has a cow tag. So we'll be back in Wyoming in December.
Wow!
And then our elk season will be over at that point.
Didn't you say you're going to
Hopefully
Arizona?
My marriage isn't over at that point.
Didn't you say you're going to Arizona?
Yeah, in between that, I'm going to Arizona. I have a Coos deer tag. Yeah, I know.
If you need a place to stay for a while, you know you're welcome here.
Well, I hope I don't have to take you up on that offer. Well, I apologize to the audience that we've been absent as much as we have. We're going to start getting back on the regular schedule, sorting through all the comments and ideas that come in from the website, and people will start getting their fill of the Elk Talk podcast again.
Totally. Yep. No,
and hopefully this new technology works. If you hear anything funky in this, folks, we went out and bought some new remote technology to do this with. So we'll see.
Yeah, and we're already, there's slight issues. There's a little delay here between me talking and you. The other direction, it's just fine. But for whatever reason, got a little delay. But technology is a crazy thing. To be able to sit remotely like this and have a conversation that we can automatically is uploaded and shared with other people is pretty awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool. I don't know what we want to do for our next topics, but spoiler alert, I shot a wolf last week.
Oh, so, yeah. Let's talk about wolf hunting.
Okay, I'm happy to talk about it. So. But you're probably going to have to throttle me back when we start talking about the fact that right now Colorado has a ballot initiative. It looks like it got enough signatures to get on the ballot about introducing wolves in Colorado. So I'm going to take a pill. I'm going to show up under sedation for that podcast because there are just so many things about ballot box biology, as they call it. So many things about just, we know, you and I living in ground zero here of where the wolves got released in 1995. We've seen the consequences, and we've seen what it's like with the fact that we actually have hunting and trapping seasons. Where we get Idaho, Montana, we get to do something about it. But in Colorado, I have this great suspicion that once those wolves are on the ground, they're not going to have, I think, isn't public land trapping already illegal in Colorado?
Yeah,
if I remember right.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they're going to manage them. Anyhow, we better save that for the next podcast.
I was going to say, let's regroup here and we'll record another podcast. So join us in the next podcast, and we're going to talk about the wolf debate and how it relates to elk hunting and all those good things, and hear a story from Randy about the wolf he just shot.
Yeah. Anyhow, thanks for being here, folks. Sure appreciate it. I'm going to stop this podcast. And the danger here is that this is new software. That once I hit stop, if Corey and I don't know how to do this at the end, this entire conversation could be deleted and you've never heard it.
So if you're hearing it, we won.